Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of From the Stands. This is week 11. I am your host this week. It's Andy, where I'm here with Tom, as well as our buddy Noah, who is filling in for the head honcho, Brian. I hope I did. I think I did my best Brian impression there to start the show. Hit you with the hello, everyone. But anyway, it's From the Stands. We're back. It's week 11. We had an interesting week 10 last week. I know I actually had a good week last week because my team won. But Tom, let's kick it to you first. What stood out to you most from week 10? What games were you watching?
Well, Andy, pleasure. New role for you tonight. So excited for you to take that on. Unfortunately, I watched my team get the dog kicked out of them by Clemson. Dabo Sweeney's team played like it was Christmas Day. Sam Hartman threw 2 interceptions, and my Saturday was shitty. Yes, Mitchell Evans is out for the season, but there is no excuse as to why the offensive line could not take care of Jeremiah Trotter, who had a career day, 2 sacks, and a pick 6. Notre Dame gets their 3rd loss of the season and right now is in line to play LSU in a bowl game. Storylines, Bama toppling over LSU. Bama, are they back? I think so. Jalen Milroe looks really good, man. I'll tell you something. 155 rushing yards and 4 touchdowns. That was one game I caught. And then another game, battle of the Heismans. Caleb Williams against Michael Penix Jr. Washington wins 52-42. That defense is so bad for USC. They have nobody. Their players might be watching from the stands by the end of this season if they don't get their shit together.
I figured they'd already be tuning in every week. Noah, he's our resident Georgia fan.
That's right.
What stood out to you last week? What games were you watching?
Yes, obviously I watched the Georgia game. Good win. A very stressful game because Kirby Smart decided for the first half not to spy Brady Cook at all, and that was basically most of their offense was him running the ball more than passing. Second half, they kind of turned to running the ball more with Schrader at running back, but pretty impressive win. Obviously, it was not an easy win. It was pretty stressful. It wasn't like the Auburn game. The Auburn game made me about have a heart attack, but solid win against, a very respectable team at home, which was big as well. Other games that stuck out to me, Texas, close game against Kansas State without Quinn Ewers playing, but they were able to pull it off, keep their playoff hopes alive. LSU, Brian Kelly. I don't know if you've heard of this thing called the quarterback spy, but you should have at least given it a shot. I mean, four touchdowns for Jalen Milroe on the ground. I've been very impressed with him. I think he has a bazooka arm, and that offense has improved as the years gone on. That is not the same team that lost to Texas. I'm not looking forward to potentially playing them in the championship game. I think we can still win, but it'll be a tough matchup. You can never count out the GOAT Nick Saban as well. And yeah, USC. It's just the same with their defense. I'll tell you what, guys. What I want to see in bowl season is a USC LSU bowl game, because then we can see about 150 points scored. It'll be the most exciting offensive game ever played. But Michael Penix with a nice bounce back after kind of a struggle win over Stanford the week before. So, maybe not an absolutely loaded slate, but there were still some pretty good games with decent implications. So, but this week's got some barn burners, some massive playoff implications on the line this week.
Yeah, I mean, you guys really knocked it out of the park. The big one for me was my Illini going into Minneapolis and absolutely stealing a win from the Golden Gophers. Luke Altmaier goes down. John Paddock, the backup quarterback, has to come in cold on 4th and 11 from Illinois' 15-yard line with just over a minute left. Leads them on an 85-yard touchdown drive, 3 for 3 through the air, 85 yards, including a 50-yard touchdown pass to Isaiah Williams to take the lead and shock the Gophers in the final minute. I couldn't believe it, boys. Jumped off my couch, said, what? I said, there's no way. It's good to get in the win column. You need 2 more and you get to a bowl game. I said, in my bold predictions at the beginning of the year that they'd be 9-3. Clearly that did not happen. I'd be fucking thrilled if you got to 7-5. But keep it going. Other games that stood out to me. How about Oklahoma State over Oklahoma and likely the last Bedlam matchup? The scene there with the fans rushing the field, then hitting them with the "We are never ever ever getting back together" on the loudspeakers. And that was gorgeous, by the way, fellas. Thank you for the compliment on that. And then, Bama over LSU. I had LSU. I did, Noah, I did pick Missouri to upset the Bulldogs, and it looked real good for 3/4 of that game. But yeah, other than that, and again, another one, last one I'll mention, Pac-12 After Dark, Arizona taking care of business against UCLA. They are a completely different team from the beginning of the year. Fafita he is inserting himself into that race of elite Pac-12 quarterbacks this season. So all over the board there, boys, but we got some fun segments to get into this week that we came up with here. Let me get that off. So we're going to do a buy or sell. So this has been a big theme on this show, Tom, the past few weeks, really since the stories dropped, and really everywhere in the college football landscape, whether you're media or whatever, a fan, you're talking about this story. Obviously, it's the Connor Stallions story. Boys, there's another wrinkle to it. Shocker. There's something new that comes out about this. It feels like every day, right? So we're going to do a little buy or sell after a couple articles drop. So are we buying or selling that Michigan is the only college football program involved in this sign stealing scandal? So first, a former employee at a Big Ten football program said Monday it was his job to seal signs and that he was given details from multiple conference schools before his team played Michigan to compile a spreadsheet of play calling signals used by the Wolverines last year. And secondly, Michigan has sent documents to the Big Ten that the school believes that 3 conference teams engaged in communications about the Wolverines signals last year, Rutgers, Ohio State, and Purdue. Tom, what do you think about this? Are you buying that this is not just a problem at Michigan, or do you think this is a tactic by the Big Blue to kind of get some smoke off their own asses?
Yeah, I think there's several different ways you could kind of peel the orange here with this. For me, what I read through these articles and some additional research is that the NCAA legally does not outlaw sign stealing. However, there are rules in place saying that you can't do in-person scouting and using electronical equipment to steal signs. I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of buying it a little bit. I think, we all know there's not just one team in the entire country that does some form of, I don't want to call it cheating, but some form of sign stealing. Everybody does it to a certain degree. Maybe not every single team every single week, but I do think there are multiple teams involved. So if we're wording the phrase that way, Andy, I'm buying this. I do think there are other teams involved. Is Michigan sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Are they kind of hyping up the story a little bit more than it should be? Possibly, because they're in line for a college football playoff berth right now. But then it dates back to the first 3 games this season. The self-imposed university punishment against Jim Harbaugh, right? Where he was he was suspended for the first 3 games. They brought back his dad, Jack, 84-year-old Jack. You got to love that. In lieu of trying to prevent the NCAA from coming down on them too hard. Because what I've read is the possible punishment from this is a Jim Harbaugh suspension and nothing more. But as more information comes out, we know Stallions is gone. I'm buying this right now. They're not the only team involved. They're just the one team that got caught at this time. But I do think they might be somewhat exaggerating the story right now to get the heat off their back, since they are the number 3 team in the CFP.
I could see that. So for this whole Rutgers, Ohio State, Purdue thing. So Purdue, which faced Michigan in the 2022 Big Ten championship game, received offensive signals from Ohio State and defensive signals from Rutgers, according to sources. Michigan beat Rutgers 52-17 on November 5th and beat Ohio State 45-23 on November 26th, a game that clinched the East Division for the Wolverines. Are we sure they didn't give them dummy signs? Like, how great was this intel if these teams were getting blown the fuck out? I mean, these are multiple score games. I don't know. Tom, I think you bring up a good point, though. They are not the only team that's stealing signs. Hell, my head coach, Brett Bielema, in an interview today, talking about Michigan and their whole situation from last year, saying it was sickening that they, sent people to multiple Illinois games, allegedly, for filming signs, stealing it that way. But he has said, it is a common practice in college football. He said, my first job when I was a GA in 1993 was to read the defense and figure out what signals were coming in. It's common practice. So I'm sure it's happening everywhere. But you bring a good perspective about it. Noah, what do you think? Are you buying or are you selling?
I'm probably going to sell on this one. First of all, let me just say, this guy's an absolute idiot, man. The coach was responsible for this. That he resigned and said, and the reason he resigned was like, I don't want to bring unnecessary attention to my team. Well, it's too late for that, you moron, because I mean, like, this is literally the talk of college football for the past 3 weeks. So I don't think Michigan's the only one that is doing it. I think the only one so far that's stupid enough to get caught. I mean, seriously, why? First of all, I got to say this. Purdue, I don't know if they had some Jamarcus Russell film tapes or something like that, but they clearly did not do a good job studying those signs enough. And as Tom pointed out, not illegal to steal signs. In fact, this actually kind of reminds me a lot of the Astros controversy, where it's not illegal to completely steal signs. You just can't use a videotape inside the stadium, do it like that, because obviously that's a completely unfair advantage. But do I think they're the only one? No. Now, I do understand the point that, them bringing it up, trying to maybe kind of save their ass a little bit. I do see that argument, but it kind of reminds me of the recruiting violations, to where, one team gets caught and all their teams dog on, like, oh my God, this is the worst thing we've ever seen. And then it comes out later, oh wait, pretty much everyone was doing stuff like this. It's kind of one of those things to where we don't have the evidence now, but it kind of feels like a dirty secret at this point, to where they're going to be looking at it a bit closer now, and they probably will find out that, yes, other teams have done this. Have they done it, or have, programs at the caliber of Michigan done it? I don't know. Remains to be seen. But do I think they're the only program doing it? No, they just were unfortunate to get caught. I mean, I was reading an article earlier that they were investigating Central Michigan to see if they had done the same thing against Central Michigan. And look, I don't know how desperate they are where they have to do that against Central Michigan, but that's just embarrassing. But yeah, I'm probably going to sell it. Obviously, got to wait for more evidence to come out. This has been an absolute clown show, but I hope it's just a ban, just a suspension for Jim Harbaugh. But once you get into bowl bans and all that crap, it's really complicated, and it's going to get really messy. There's going to be a lot of legal issues if they go that far. I understand, you want to present a hard line, but then you might be opening Pandora's box to where all of a sudden you got to investigate every team for it, and then are you going to ban multiple teams from the bowls? I just think it's a complete mess. So we'll see what happens there. But no, I don't think they're the only one doing it. I think they're just the only one right now that we know pretty much for sure that they've done it.
Sure. I think I agree with you there, Noah. I don't think they're the only ones stealing signs, but I think they might be the only team that had a staffer going to that extent to do it, right? Mm-hmm. Where he's on the sideline at a Central Michigan game with those Ray-Bans that have the camera in them when they're playing Michigan State. that slept in his car so he could rent out his house as an Airbnb to make money to send to people to buy tickets to go to these games, buying those tickets in his own name. You could tell me all you want that Harbaugh had no idea this was going on. 100% he knew this was going on. This was just don't say anything directly to Harbaugh about this. But this guy is standing right behind your offensive and defensive coordinator on every drive, just so happening to be caught on camera saying run or pass right before the D coordinator calls in the play.
Right.
So yeah, this story's wild. I don't know. Apparently, this anonymous Big Ten staffer was not a Michigan staffer. He's no longer employed at this Big Ten school. Shared these documents with Michigan because he said he believes they're being unfairly targeted.
Right.
I also heard, it's common practice. A lot of these coaches are friends. Coaching is basically a fraternity at this point, where you lose your job at one place, a guy you got a job the next year. But anyway, a lot of these times you got similar opponents. They do share notes, share tape, stuff like that does happen. But yeah, I think I don't know what more you can say about this other than Michigan, you're fucking scumbags.
I do have one more thing I want to add on this. I have seen, like you said there, Andy, people questioning whether or not Jim Harbaugh knew about it. And I even saw a quote from Connor Stallions that said he didn't even know what he was doing was illegal, which, first of all, that sounds like total bullshit, or you're just a complete idiot. But here's the thing, and I don't want to get in this subject too much because this is unrelated and it's a serious issue, but kind of reminds me of the Pat Fitzgerald situation where people were questioning how much he knew about what was going on there. In my opinion, I don't think it matters. Ignorance is never an excuse. Either he knew about it and that's completely messed up, or he didn't know about it and he's the guy in charge of the program and he should have known about it, and it's his fault either way. So I think no matter what, even if he didn't know about it, you still got to punish him in some way.
Yeah, absolutely. So that'll wrap up that segment. Let's move on. We've got another fun one here. The Heisman race is heating up, boys. I'm sure it doesn't look exactly like we thought it was going to week one, but we are here. We're each going to go through. We're going to name our top 3 Heisman front runners here, who we believe at this moment have the best chance to win the Heisman. Tommy, I'll start with you, my friend. Give me your 3.
All right. So first up, only the Big Ten, right? Number 3 is J.J. McCarthy for me. Yes, just over 2,100 pass yards on the season, but he has been incredible. His eyes are laser focused down the field. He gets the ball down well to his receivers. Roman Wilson has had a phenomenal season. He has skyrocketed off of draft boards, and they haven't relied on Blake Corum as much in the running game as far as running between the 20s, right? He only has 650 rushing yards last year. Our boss, Brian, said at the beginning of the season, Tommy, you're going to like this. Blake Corum will not have a 1,000 rushing yard season. Right now, he's right around 650 with just a few games left, but he still has 15 to 16 touchdowns, though. So a lot has been put on McCarthy. And in his 3 October games combined, 8 total touchdowns, no picks. Michigan has also scored 30-plus points in every game this season. The argument against McCarthy is A, who have they played? And B, he did have a 3-pick game against Bowling Green State, but right now, nobody seems to want to win this award. So I am putting McCarthy in at number 3 based off on how well Michigan has played this season. And they're in the CFP right now. So, I had to put a couple CFP teams with their play callers in there. Number 2, this is where this might get a little bit controversial. I actually threw in Bo Nix at number 2. 2,700 passing yards. We dogged Bo Nix a lot in previous years of this show, but he has completed 78% of his passes. Troy Franklin is this man's best friend. Troy Franklin might even sneak into the back end of the first round if he keeps this pace up. Nix also has 5 rushing touchdowns on top of his 25 passing. And look what Oregon has done in big games. Yes, they lost to Washington by 3 points. but they beat Utah 35-6. Cam Rising or no Cam Rising, they haven't had Rising the whole freaking year. So Utah is still a really good team, really tough place to play. They beat Colorado 40-6 back when everybody was high on them with all that hype. And then they beat Wazoo by 2 touchdowns. So I think part of that, yes, Oregon has good edge rushers on their defense. They have a solid offensive line, but I think Bo Nix deserves a lot of credit. I think he really does. He's very accurate with the football, but number one for me is Michael Penix Jr. Over 3,200 passing yards. And one last stat about Nix that I forgot. I'm sorry. Over his last 5 games, 14 touchdowns to just 1 interception over his last 5 games. But back to Penix, though. He is my number one. Again, this is another transfer like Nix. 26 touchdown passes for him, 3,200 yards. This guy holds wins over USC and Oregon. This is what does it for me. Penix beat Nix head-to-head. He's not much of a rushing threat either. So he relies more on his receivers to make plays. This could be the argument against him for being number one. He does have 3 400-yard games this season. The month of October was a little bit shaky for him with 8 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. He did not look very good. Was it the Stanford game where they only beat them? I think it was 42-33, something like that. It was a very close game. So my top 3 are McCarthy, Nix, and Penix. Just missing it here is Caleb Williams as my honorable mention, Andy. I hope that's okay. I throw this in here quick. With Caleb, the reason why I don't have him in my top 3, most of his stats came within the first 5 games of the season against no high-value opponents. He threw 3 picks against Notre Dame, 4 touchdowns to just 3 picks in the month of October, and that's across 4 games. 4 touchdowns and 3 picks total combined in 4 games cannot have me put him on this list. And USC has also lost 3 of their last 4 games and are 0-3 against ranked teams. So I think McCarthy, Nix, and Penix all deserve to be ahead of him, in my opinion.
I love it. I love it. It's a similar list to what I have, but I won't spoil that yet. Noah, who do you like for the Heisman?
Oh, man. This was probably the toughest question I had to prepare for. So, like Tom said, the Heisman race has been absolutely cleaning. It seems like one guy's the favorite. If you asked me this 3 weeks ago, Caleb Williams and Dylan Gabriel would definitely have been in my top 3. Probably with Michael Penix. I've been really impressed with them all year. Unfortunately, whether we like it or not, 2 things. The Heisman is a quarterback award, so as much as I really wanted to put Marvin Harrison, because let's be honest, he's the reason that offense is any good. Kyle McCord is not it at all. I know he absolutely ripped Tom's heart out, and that was lovely to see, but he's not it, man. Marvin Harrison's the best. Definitely the best skills player in the country. You could argue maybe the best overall offensive player in the country, but that's off the topic. So I do not have Marvin Harrison, although I really wanted to say him. I also have 3 quarterbacks. I didn't really want to put JJ McCarthy, but I just did anyway because Michigan is absolutely rolling. Now, that being said, their schedule has more cupcakes than the bakery down my street. I mean, it's been an absolute embarrassment. Now, if he shows out against Ohio State in a couple weeks and, absolutely kills it, definitely probably going to win the Heisman. That's a big Heisman moment for him. But right now, really no Heisman moment for him, so I have to keep him at number 3. Speaking of, before I move on to number 2, and where I'm probably really going to have a controversial opinion, a shout out to a guy that's nowhere near the top, but I've actually been really impressed with, Omarion Hampton, running back from UNC. He's not going to be even close, but that guy's an absolute animal. Now, number 2, and so my top 2 is the same as Tom, but I've actually flipped it. I have Michael Penix at number 2 and Bo Nix at number 1. Now, let me explain. Now, I want to say this. I've hated Bo Nix for years. When he was at Auburn, I absolutely could not stand him. I mean, Jarrett Stidham was better than Bo Nix at Auburn. He was absolutely embarrassing at Auburn. But I have to give credit. He has been excellent at Oregon. Now, I'll start with Michael Penix. He has been my favorite for the past few weeks. And Andy, if you asked me this question 2 weeks ago, I definitely would have said Michael Penix number 1. But the last 4 games, he's thrown 5 interceptions. He's kind of been struggling a little bit. He did have 4 touchdowns against Stanford, but he also only completed 57% of his passes. Bit turnover prone. He had this very big struggle win against Arizona State. No touchdowns, 2 interceptions in a game. They won 15-7. So he's kind of been a bit hit or miss lately. Bo Nix. Now, there's a couple of reasons I'm giving Bo Nix a very slight edge. Number one, he has more touchdowns, total touchdowns than Michael Penix. I believe it's 30-27 in his favor. He has only 2 interceptions this year, whereas Michael Penix has 7. And completion percentage. Penix is completing 69%. Bo Nix is completing 78%. Also, like Tom said, no disrespect to Troy Franklin. I love that guy, and I love their 2 running backs they have there. But I think Michael Penix definitely has better skills positions than Bo Nix as well. So maybe a bit of a controversial opinion, and I honestly, it does kind of pain me to put a former Auburn Tiger at number 1, but it's very close. And I would not be surprised at all if it's a week-by-week thing and Penix could retake the lead. But right now, mic drop moment, I have Bo Nix as the front runner.
Nice. So I'm pretty similar to you guys, but this is somebody we haven't heard about yet. Jordan Travis is going to be my number 3, fellas. He was 22 for 36 with 360 yards and a touchdown when Florida State beat Pitt 24-7. They are hosting Miami this week. Miami coming off that 20-6 loss to NC State. So, it's the shine of that game isn't that great, but it still is Florida State, Miami. It feels like one of those games where you throw the records out. They don't matter. They just hate each other. A 24-7 win over Pitt doesn't seem that impressive, but 22 for 36, 360 yards is still a pretty damn good day. I'd take that from my starting quarterback every week if I could. Number 2, I've got Nix. I'm the same there. He has been incredible. Oregon has blown pretty much everybody out. Obviously, besides that game against Washington, which they really had won, and you could argue if they punted the ball, they could have won that game.
Right. Hang on. Not to interrupt you, Andy, but there was one last thing I forgot to mention on my part. Bo Nix was not the reason they lost that game. Bo Nix was incredible. I got his stats in game right here. He went 33 of 44, 337, 2 touchdowns. I love Dan Lanning, former UJ guy. He's the reason they lost that game. So that's why I did not penalize Bo Nix for not being undefeated like that. Anyway, continue. Yeah. Sorry about that.
No, yeah, no worries. But just, you look at what he did in his last game, absolutely carved up California. Again, shouldn't be anything that's too impressive. 63-19, but still, Cal's not great, but still, when you put up 63 points on anybody, it's a fucking good day. 29 of 38, 386 yards, 4 touchdowns and a pick. It's the same Cal team, I will say, after I just shit on them, that the week before gave USC all they could handle. And USC obviously is not on the level of Oregon. Well, we'll see that this week as they play. But maybe it was just firing Alex Grinch. That's all they needed to do. And God, can you imagine if the USC defense comes in and pitches a shutout this weekend? Like, everybody's minds will just fucking explode. But anyway, okay, so Nix is my number 2, and then number 1, and I am in on Penix. It's crazy that this guy a couple years ago was playing at fucking Indiana, and he ended up here and actually with the chance to, play in the college football playoff and win the Heisman Trophy. He is currently the betting favorite, if you're a betting man like myself, to win the Heisman, I believe, plus 150. Coming off that win over USC, 52-42, 22 for 30, 256 yards, 2 touchdowns and interception. Not his most impressive game of the year, but they're undefeated. You can argue that they are the best team in the Pac-12, and you can argue there haven't been too many quarterbacks or players just in general that have performed to this guy's level week in and week out. I know a couple weeks ago they had that the sleepy 15-7 game, but you still have to win those. A win's a win. I still think he is currently the favorite. Somebody's going to have to prove me wrong, and not really prove me wrong, prove the Heisman voters wrong, I guess, to these last few weeks of the season, to see who takes it home. God, it's weird. It's already week 11. Like we're running out of football, fellas. It's not good. I'm getting nervous about it. But those are our Heisman front runners. Let's move on. It is time for the parlay party, folks. One of our favorite segments on the show, even though we just lose every week. The one time we won was Tom's picks week 1, and he didn't take it. He changed it at the last minute. So just even when we win, we find a way to lose. So fellas, it's a parlay party. Let me go over the rules here real quick. Minimum of 4 picks. Payout must be plus 1,000 or more. Any combo of picks that can be parlayed. Tommy boy, you want to start us off?
Yeah, sure. So I went with 5 legs. And my first leg is I like Michigan to lay out minus 4.5 against Penn State. That clocks in at minus 115. Like I said, I really think Michigan has impressed me a lot this season. Penn State, James Franklin, he tends to fold in big games. I know Ohio State was an 8-point game, but they really, I believe they scored late in that one. It wasn't as close as what the final score may have showed. So I like Michigan there to cover 4.5. This next one, this might give some stuff away later in our shots and chasers, but Missouri money line over Tennessee, and here's why. I wanted to put in a leg that really wasn't, kind of like something a lot of people would want to throw in there because Tennessee has won the last 4 matchups. So I think Missouri is due. And they weren't awful against Georgia last week. They weren't bad. I mean, Noah could tell you best, but yeah, I really like Missouri here in this one to get the upset. If you call it that, they're literally one ranking away from each other. So I sold points on this next one. I took Georgia minus 6.5 against Ole Miss. The original line was 10.5. I dropped it to 1 touchdown. Just because I think Ole Miss is a little bit underrated in certain areas of their team. And I think the way they match up against Georgia. Also, I just don't feel comfortable putting money on 10 points. That's a lot of points. So I'm going to bring that down a little bit. That clocks in at minus 194. So I think Georgia beats them by at least a touchdown. Oklahoma State minus 2.5 at UCF. Sorry, Brian, don't fire me. Minus 114. If I am correct, UCF has won 1 Big 12 game, if that. So Oklahoma State comes in with Allen Bowman on the road, minus 2.5. I think they win by at least a field goal after the upset in Bedlam last week. And finally, the game of no defense, where I also sold points. I probably shouldn't have brought it down, but I did by 3 or 4 points. Oregon and USC over 70.5. I like Caleb Williams and Bo Nix to light it up. Not sure who I'm going to pick for the money line yet, although we have that in a later segment. But this clocks in at Andy, you probably have the odds, or I should have the odds since I placed the bet.
I've got it right here.
Yes, I believe it is $10 for 162 or 30% profit boost. You can tick that up to $211.04.
Hell yeah.
There we go.
I like this one. I do like this one a lot. I think Missouri over Tennessee is a game I will be on as well. I can't trust Penn State. I think Michigan's the better team. A lot of points there in the Oregon USC game, but I mean, USC's proven they can't stop anybody. So yeah, this is one I will be following you on for sure, Tom. Noah, I know you're not a betting man, but you put together a parlay for the show, so we appreciate that. Do you want to hit us with it?
Yeah, so like Andy said, I'm not a bettor. Betting is not legal in my state. So for the FBI agent listening in, I did not place this bet. Please don't arrest me. I just did this as a sample and then took a screenshot of them so that I could have something for the show. So I did a 5-leg parlay. And Tom, I got to say, I'm a little disappointed in you. I think you played it very safe. Mine was a $10 wager, and my payout would be 238.71 plus plus 23.87 is what this parlay comes out to. So first part, minus 115. I have Michigan minus 4.5 against Penn State. I think Michigan could, if they come out, firing all cylinders. No disrespect to Penn State, but it seems like we see this every year. They get hyped up. Oh, this is the year they're going to do something, and then they play Ohio State and Michigan, and they get absolutely boat race. So I definitely have Michigan covering that. Another cover I have, but for a team I'm not sure will win, I have Kentucky covering plus 10.5 against Alabama. They're at home. They're a good team. I know they've lost some games this year, but they've been to pretty good teams like Georgia, Tennessee. They killed Florida, which, I mean, granted, looking at it now, Florida's an absolute embarrassment, which I love to see. But, yeah, they're a tough team. They're a physical team. Ray Davis is an animal. I am concerned about Devin Leary. We'll see what he does. But if they can contain Milroe, because I'm not going to say you're going to stop him because he's been red hot lately and he's got that bazooka arm. I definitely think they could cover. I don't know if they'll win, but I do think they could keep it close. That's a minus 110 on that one. Third one at minus 115. South Carolina minus 13.5 against Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's an absolute embarrassment to college football. I'm sorry. Fantastic academic university. Okay, one of the best in the entire country. Their football team is one of the biggest disgraces I've ever seen in my life. They're basically a bye week for pretty much any team that plays them at this point that's halfway decent. Minus 13.5. South Carolina will easily cover that. And if they don't, I know it's been a terrible season for them, but come on, guys. This should be easy for you. The last two went a little different. I did match points on these two. My first one, minus 105. Tennessee at Missouri, I took the over of 57.5. Missouri has an okay defense, but it's not elite. It's something like 53rd ranked overall. And Tennessee's defense they have a good ranking, but when I've watched them against good teams like Alabama, Kentucky, and Florida, their defense is not good at all. So I'm still not sold on their defense. So I am going to take the over for that one. I think it could easily get into the 60s for that one. And last but not least, minus 110. This is the one I'm the least sure about, but I just want to add a fifth one because that was the max amount I could put on DraftKings for this parlay. Utah at Washington. I took the under 49.5. Utah has a phenomenal defense. I think they could potentially slow down Washington's offense better than anyone has all year. But on the other side, no Cam Rising. I mean, Bryson Barnes has looked okay at times, but that's it. Just okay. He has 8 touchdown passes, the 5 interceptions on the year. No one is worried at all about Utah's offense. So I do think this could be a surprising low-scoring type of game.
I like it. I like it a lot. These are two parlays that you guys have both talked me into. I don't see. I hate betting unders. I will say that, but Utah always seems to be in those low-scoring matchups, and you can't really trust Bryce Barnes. I mean, I'm with you there. I think I've got $20 invested this weekend, boys. Don't you fucking let me down. Well, let's go with mine. And then Brian actually shared a parlay with us too. I'll have Tommy Boy read that off when I'm all done telling you my picks that are going to lose. So 4 legs plus 11.58, $10 to win 115 and 88 cents. I'm sure I've got a boost on there somewhere I just haven't used yet. So I'm going Alabama, Kentucky over 46.5. I feel like that's not a ridiculous amount of points in this game for two teams, two offenses that I know can score the ball. I'm going to take Kansas minus 3.5. They're hosting Texas Tech. Not really sold on the Red Raiders. And I've loved to watch Kansas this year. They are a very fun ball team. I will take Georgia Tech plus 14.5 at Clemson. This one is risky. I know. I am just basing this off of something I dropped on the show last week. Georgia Tech has won all of their games in the odd numbered weeks. It's week 11, motherfuckers. I don't need them to win. I just need them to cover 14.5. And then lastly, I'm going to go Arizona and Colorado over 54.5. Colorado's defense is Swiss cheese. Arizona can score the ball. Colorado can put up points too. So that is my parlay. $10 to win 115 and 88 cents. Boys, tear me apart. What do you think?
I think it's great. I give it an A++, Andy.
Good.
No, the one leg that I don't disagree with you, but that might have trouble hitting based off of last week's performance is Georgia Tech plus 14.5. Now I get it. The odd weeks are their weeks, but it seems like Clemson had like their best performance of the season last week. And unfortunately, it came against my Fighting Irish. So I am a little bit concerned about that one. Alabama, Kentucky, I think that should. That could go either way, but I'm leaning towards yes on that one. The other two, I think those are all but locks.
I love it. I love it. And yeah, Clemson looking so good last week is exactly why I'm fading them this week. I love it. I absolutely love it. All right. Let's go to our shots and chasers for the week.
Hold up. Brian.
Oh, Brian's parlay. Sorry, Brian. I'm so sorry. I could never forget you, Brian. Please, when you watch this, don't fire me. I swear I'm doing a good job, Brian. Go ahead with this parlay.
And he's doing a fantastic job. And yes, Brian McCardle did leave a note all the way from London or wherever he is right now.
He's in London now, yeah.
Yes. So Brian took 5 legs. And Brian always brings the spicy takes. There's always one that you're like, wow, Brian did that. He took Penn State plus 10. I think that's reasonable. Against Michigan at home. He took Oklahoma State minus 5.5 at UCF. That's an interesting one. So we'll see what happens with that. That comes in at plus 149. Texas minus 7.5 at TCU. I don't know. Is Quinn Ewers back yet, or is it?
I think
still
he is.
Murphy?
Yeah, I think he's on track to play this week.
Well, there you go. He got that at minus 178. That's a gift wrapped right there. Alabama minus 6.5 at Kentucky. So he likes the touchdown to cover. That comes in at minus 204. Not bad. And then finally, Tennessee at Missouri, similar to, I think this was Noah. I think you picked this one, but I think Brian might have sold points here. 52.5 over comes in at minus 203. So that's a 5-pick parlay for total odds of plus 1133. $10 for $123.30.
Love it. He always has a spicy take in there, and every time he bets against UCF, they fuck him over. So that might mean like he can't bet against his boys. He can't bet against the Knights. But hopefully, Brian, we will have some scratch waiting for you at home when you get back from your trip. Safe travel. Yeah, it's just one big trick. He's not gone. He's just done with the show. It's our problem now. When you get back, we'll be here. We'll be waiting for you. Week 12. Looking forward to it. Enjoy your trip, Brian. We will keep your seat nice and warm for you. So that has been the Parlay Party. We're going to now our shots and chasers. So we picked our games of the week for week 11, and we will preview them now. So we're going to start with a matchup in the Big Ten. 11 a.m. for me, but for the purposes of the show, we'll say noon, even though Central Time Zone is the most elite time zone, and I won't hear any argument about it. Penn State hosting Michigan, number 10 versus number 3. I went off the CFP rankings. I know the AP are a little different, but I went off the CFP because I figured those are the ones that matter. Tom, what do you think about this game?
Well, if it isn't a Big Ten game first. Well, if you listen to my predictions throughout the show in our parlay party, I'm rolling with Michigan here. McCarthy is a baller. Blake Corum with those 16 touchdowns. This is a game of college football's top defenses. Linebacker Junior Colson patrols the field very well. Josiah Stewart leads the team in sacks, and I like the fact that this is the first real test for the Wolverines. If they pull this one out this week and cover, now people can't come out and say, well, you didn't beat anybody. So I think that's really key for them. The Nittany Lions coming off a tough loss to Ohio State recently. Drew Aller, only one interception all season. He's taking care of the football very well. I'd like to see him take that next step forward. I think next year he'll have more receiver talent. Right now, it's a lot of relying on Katron Allen and Nick Singleton. Tight end Theo Johnson, there's the first one. 4 tutties on the season. And tight end Tyler Warren, there's the second one, 6 tutties on the season. But defensively for the Nittany Lions, I mentioned their defense is very good as well. NFL draft hopeful Adisa Isaac, 6.5 sacks, and their corners are solid, right? When I'm looking at Kalen King and Johnny Dixon, those two going up against Roman Wilson and Cornelius Johnson in press man coverage, that could pose some challenges for J.J. McCarthy. Where will Michigan's offensive line give McCarthy enough time for him to progress through his second read? That's my question. My answer is yes. They do it enough more often than not. Michigan wins.
Noah, what do you think?
I've got Michigan this one for a couple of reasons. This is the first big test for Michigan. Obviously, Penn State already played Ohio State and lost, although it was a fairly close game. But I will say this. This is easily the best offense, in my opinion, Penn State has played. I know people say Ohio State. Ohio State has no quarterback at all. Michigan does have a quarterback, and he's pretty good. He takes care of the football, and he does have, like Tom said, 2 solid wideouts. Roman Wilson, Cornelius Johnson combined for 60 catches, over 1,000 yards, and 11 touchdowns this season. And I think it was Tom who mentioned earlier that Blake Corum doesn't have the yardage this season, but he still does have 16 touchdowns. So you can't count out their running game as well. 2 really good defenses. Penn State is number 2. I think Michigan is number 7 or something like that, somewhere around there. They give up 6.7 points per game. So 2 very elite defenses. I just have more faith in Michigan's offense. I think Drew Aller, he looks really good against teams that most people have never heard of. But when I watched him against teams like Northwestern and obviously Ohio State, I think he really struggled. I think he's a talented guy, but against a defense like this, I think he might be in for a bit of a hard time. A couple other things as well. Michigan's football team, first of all, their offensive line is really good, although they did rob you of the Joe Moore Award last year. I will say that. But only 2.7 penalties against the Michigan football team this year, which is the best in the country. That's an absolutely insane mark. So I'm going to go with Michigan in this one. I do think it could be close because it is a road game. But like I said earlier, Penn State seems like the last few years, they always get these expectations. Then they play Ohio State and Michigan, and they come up short. And James Franklin, I think he's a very good coach. What he did at Vanderbilt years ago was an absolute miracle. But it seems like whenever the team has expectations, his record against the AP top 10 is atrocious. He's never even won on the road against one, I believe. I don't think anything's going to change here. I do have Michigan winning this one on the road. Final score, God, I don't know, like 24-14, something like that.
I love it. My man's throwing out final scores here. Love the predictions. So for me in this game, it really comes down to which one of these defenses breaks first, right? You said it. No, it's the number 2 ranked defense as far as yards per game and the number 6 ranked defense as far as yards per game, 2 being Michigan, 6 being Penn State. But a big matchup for me here, fellas. Which one of these running backs, Singleton or Corum, can they get loose for a big run first? Can they, average more than 3-4 yards a carry in this game? Because these are 2 defenses that really have not been hurt by the run all year, have been doing a great job of stopping the run. Penn State is second in the country, only allowing 60 rushing yards a game. Michigan, not too bad either, 90 rush yards a game for them there. So I'm going to give Michigan the edge here. I know they're going to Happy Valley, but they're 4.5-point favorites. You can say their schedule hasn't been there. I've watched Penn State play a couple times this year, and I just really have not been impressed. They came to Champaign and they beat Illinois, and I still don't think they're that great. Not that Illinois is any thing to write home about beating them. But you get what I'm saying. Wolverines. We're going to move on to our next one, to the SEC. It's our chaser for the noon slot. Kentucky hosting number 8 Alabama. Noah, our SEC guy, what do you think about this one?
See, this is a tough one because obviously I want Kentucky to win,
Right.
because I do not want Alabama to sneak. If they sneak in the playoffs, man, look out, because that team has been doubted all season ever since they lost to Texas. But they've just been rolling lately. I mean, their offense has been clicking. They've been on fire lately. Jalen Milroe, you got to remember, guys, Jalen Milroe got benched in the USF game, and people were wondering, was he ever going to play again? And then luckily for him, Ty Simpson and um, Tom's boy, Tyler Buckner, were also absolutely atrocious in that game. So he actually got another chance, and he's been really good since. It's tough to call because Kentucky is at home. I think they're a solid team, 6-3. They deserve respect. But Alabama has been red hot lately. They were rolling against LSU. Granted, every offense rolls against LSU, but it was a close game at halftime, and then they just took control in the second half. And what I was most impressed by was Alabama's defense making a lot of big plays against a very potent LSU offense on the other side. I think for Alabama, if they can slow down Ray Davis, I think they win the game. I love Devin Leary at NC State back in 2021. I don't think he's been very good at Kentucky. I think he's been turnover prone. He's inaccurate. He's okay. Like, I don't think he's terrible, but he's not a guy that I think can go out there and win a game for you. So if they do slow down Ray Davis, I think they can slow down the Kentucky offense. On the other side, I think Alabama's offense has looked phenomenal lately. I think it will continue. I think it'll be a close game. Like I said, I did pick Kentucky to cover the 10.5. But this Alabama team is not the same team that lost to Texas back in week 2. And they're also here's and actually that stat's stupid. I'm not going to say that. ESPN with their dumb stats. I saw 27-0 on the screen. I was like, oh, maybe I can say that. Nope. It was absolutely stupid stats. But Alabama, they're going to win as much as I hate it.
Tom, what do you make of this one?
Well, let's take a look at the Crimson Tide in the SEC. They're 6-0 with wins over Tennessee and LSU in back-to-back weeks. They're on a roll. Noah and I went on a little Florida adventure. We went to the cocktail party a couple weeks ago, and all I heard in the car on those car rides, Alabama's the one team that scares me a little bit in the SEC.
Yep.
Jalen Milroe is back. He has 9 rushing touchdowns to go on top of 13 passing. Chase McClellan and Roydell Williams, they might as well call them 1A and 1B in the backfield. Their receiving core is lacking a little this year outside of Jermaine Burton, but that's because they're young. They're young, and they'll get better, and they're getting better throughout the course of the season. Defensively is where they've really impressed me. Dallas Turner has at least half a sack in 6 of the last 7 games. He also has 2 forced fumbles. He might be a top 5 pick for all that we know in this year's NFL draft. Let's see what happens there with that, but he's guaranteed top 10 for sure. Deontay Lawson and Chris Braswell get to the quarterback as well. Terrion Arnold has developed into a nice corner. Terrion Arnold will be matched up most likely against Tavion Robinson. And the Wildcats, after their awesome win against the Gators, have lost 3 of their last 4 games. But they're all quality SEC opponents: Missouri, Tennessee, and Georgia. Devin Leary, I still don't know if he's fully recovered from last year's knee injury. I just don't know. And unfortunately, it might have ruined his collegiate career. He's not playing bad. His numbers are respectable, but he could be playing better. Last year, there was rumbling about this guy possibly being a first-round pick in the 2024 draft. That conversation, unfortunately, is long gone out the window for this guy. He relies on his running back, Ray Davis, a lot, who has over 900 yards. Defensively, they're not bad, too. I like J.J. Weaver, Deone Walker, but this is what does it in for me. Alabama leads the all-time series 38-2. Roll Tide.
I should have figured that it was that lopsided, but I had not heard that. You took the words right out of my mouth, Tom, as far as Kentucky. They got off to this 5-0 start, feeling really good about themselves. Now they're sitting at 6-3, lost 3 of the last 4. that they did win last week. They beat a really, really bad Mississippi State team, so that's nothing to write home about. But now they've got Kentucky. I'm sorry. Now Kentucky has Alabama at home. Alabama's coming in. They haven't lost since week 2, like Noah said. They're coming off that 42-point win. They scored 42, 34, 24, 26 points, 40 points. The offense has kind of figured themselves out here since week 2. I expect hopefully a lot of points to be scored because I'm going to be taking the over. And I'm going to take Alabama as well. I like that 10.5. I think Kentucky at home, I'll give them a little bit of juice there. Hopefully the tailgating is right. They're in Lexington and they have a lot of liquored up fans because we're going to need their all too. The Wildcats are going to need them, but I don't think it's going to be enough. I think they cover, but Alabama wins the game, or Alabama could blow them out. I don't know, but either way, I'm taking the Crimson Tide. Next up, our shot for the 3:30 games. It's going to be over the Pac-12. Number 5 Washington hosting number 18 Utah. Tom, this one's going to be on Fox. What do you think?
Yeah, the Pac-12 this year disturbingly has so many games on our cards week in and week out, but let's be honest with ourselves. They deserve it.
Yeah.
Utah has a tendency to ruin their opponent's season. They did it to USC. I mean, they've done it to several different teams thus far. Their losses are to the state of Oregon, the Beavers, and the Ducks. No Cam Rising, no Brant Cuthie all season long. I mean, Bryson Barnes has looked okay. They rely on their running game and their defense. Jonah Ellis, future NFL player, 11.5 sacks. Logan Fano needs to step up. If they're going to win this game, they need Cole Bishop to step up in the secondary, maybe pick off a pass from Michael Penix Jr. and set up a short field touchdown. Washington's defense is nothing to ride home about. They're not too great themselves, but they're far better than USC. I'll tell you that much. Michael Penix Jr. is too much. I mean, Lander Barton dropping back into cover 2, Tampa 2 coverage, whatever they run there. That's going to be a problem with Roma Dunze, Jalen Polk. Jalen McMillan has been a background character this year. Somebody mentioned earlier how Penix Jr. has a lot more weapons than Bo Nix does. I think that was you, Noah. Mm-hmm. And not to mention, Washington owns Utah historically. So at home, number 5 overall team in the country, yeah, I didn't like that 15-7, whatever that score was last week against Arizona State, whoever it was. It was Arizona State. But I still think Washington wins here. What I'm concerned about is them covering that 9.5 point spread. That I'm not sure that happens, but I do think they win outright.
I like it. Noah, what do you think?
Yeah, I have Washington winning this one as well. I kind of went over this a bit when I did the parlay pick for the under, but a couple of reasons. Like Tom alluded to, I think Bryson Barnes is just okay. I don't think he's garbage or anything. He's a good game manager. He hasn't really lost them many games. He's kind of kept them in most of their games, but he's inconsistent. He'll have one game. He had 4 touchdowns against Arizona State. And then he has the game against Oregon, which, I will give credit to Oregon and Dan Lanning for this. That defense is much improved, but it wasn't even competitive. I think he completed around 50% of his passes, had 2 picks, no touchdowns, obviously, because they lost 35-6. I don't have faith in him at all. If Cam Rising, which by the way, I do feel bad for Cam Rising, it seemed like, he's going to come back against UCLA, and they just kept pushing back and back and back until Guy Whittingham finally said, yeah, we're shutting him and Keithy down for the season. So, but yeah, this is not at all the same Utah offense as it would be the Rising. So I think it's going to be, a defensive game. Utah still has a solid defense, but on the other side, like Tom said, Michael Penix is the man. I know he's had a lot of turnovers lately, but, I think he's still an absolute beast. He's got the beast wide receivers as well. He threw for 256 yards last week and a pair of touchdowns, so he's getting back on track. And speaking of 256 yards, Dylan Johnson, Washington running back, had 4 touchdowns last week. If he keeps that up, this offense will be very difficult to stop by anyone in the country, but they need to win up front. Jonah Ellis is second in the nation with 11 and a half sacks. He has had at least a sack in 5 of his last 6 games, and Utah is number 11 in the country with sacks with 29 on the season. But I still have Washington winning this game. I just have absolutely no faith in Utah's offense to put up the points needed to win a close one. So I got Washington winning this one 27-17.
I like that. I like it a lot. So it's, I mean, you said it, Washington, they've got the number 1 pass offense in the country, 383 yards through the air. Potentially 3 different receivers have a chance to go for over 1,000 yards on the same offense. That's absolutely insane. Dunze has played himself into a first-round pick. Penix has been absolutely incredible. Like I said, he's my Heisman frontrunner, and I wholeheartedly agree with you. I cannot trust this Utah offense to do anything. I have Washington here. I know it's chalky that we're all picking the same thing, but it's just really hard for me to pick Utah in this game, even though they have that history. They are the Pac-12 spoilers when they have no business winning some of these games and just completely fucking up their fellow conference members' paths to the playoff. So I expect Washington to win this game, but for all I know, it'll be 1 score with 2 minutes to go, and Washington having to fight for their lives to win this one. But I think the Huskies take this one at home, improve to 10-0. We're gonna go to our next game, so our chaser for the afternoon slot. It's another fun one in the SEC. Missouri, number 14 Missouri hosting number 13 Tennessee over on CBS. Noah, I'm going back to you. What do you think about this game?
This is probably the toughest game when I was looking at the schedule of games we were picking to pick. Both these teams are really good. Number 13 versus number 14. Both teams have the exact same record, both overall and in the conference, 7-2 and 3-2, respectively, for both of them. Like both quarterbacks, not as big of a fan as Joe Milton. I think he has a lot of talent, but I think he's a bit inconsistent. Is good for a turnover here and there. I mean, you have to remember, guys, he started the season 2021. He got injured, and then that injury, seemed to extend because Hendon Hooker came in and was absolutely phenomenal. But, realistically, I think his play had a bit to do with it as well. On the other side, Brady Cook, really liked him. But I will say this about Brady Cook. I believe he has 4 interceptions in the last 4 games, which is a bit concerning because before that, he was taking excellent care of the football. But recently, I mean, the interception he had against Georgia last week, it's one of the worst throws I've ever seen in my life. He was about to get sacked. He just threw up a little duck that didn't even get the line of scrimmage. And Nazir Stackhouse, you guys realize, is a big, fat defensive lineman, picked the ball off. That tells you how good of a throw it was. So he's been struggling lately. Like I said earlier when I went on the parlay, I think it's going to be a very high-scoring game. Missouri's their defense is okay, but it's not anything special. Tennessee's defense is high in the rankings defensively. But like I said, when they played good teams, they got killed by Florida because they couldn't stop the running game. They got killed in the second half by Alabama. I mean, it wasn't even competitive. They got absolutely steamrolled in the second half. And then Kentucky, I know they won that game, but Kentucky still scored 27 points against them. So it's a close one. I think it's going to be very high scoring. I just have more faith in Missouri. In fact, coming into last weekend, guys, when they're coming to Athens, Missouri was probably the most frightened of a team that I've been all season. I mean, I was nervous as hell when that game was coming up. So I was really happy that we won it. Tennessee, I think they're a good team, but on the road as well at Ford Field, I'm going to go Missouri to win this one. Absolute shootout type of game. I'm going to say 35-31 Missouri.
I like it. Tom, what do you think?
I like hearing that a lot, especially since I placed some money on it. I'll tell you that much. Tennessee favored by 2. Joe Milton II relies a lot on his running backs, Jabari Small, Jalen Wright, and Dylan Sampson, all over 400 yards on the year for 12 total combined touchdowns. There is not much outside of Squirrel White and Ramel Keaton on offense. Even those two are inconsistent at times. Squirrel gets most of the volume. The Vols have lost to Florida, bad loss, and Alabama. So for me, when I look at Missouri, I'm looking at how can they neutralize Tennessee's running game? Because if they do that, they win. And I think it starts with linebacker Tyron Hopper. I think Darius Robinson and Johnny Walker need to pressure the quarterback, get Milton confused early, send some disguise blitzes. You have Chris Abrams-Drain, who is a phenomenal young corner with 4 picks and 11 passes defended. History is not on Missouri's side here, though, so I'm a little bit concerned about that. They've lost the last 4 matchups, but like Noah, since it's on my card, I'm rolling with Missouri here, and I'll tell you something. Brady Cook, yes, 2 picks last week, but that dude can run. Cody Schrader, 10 tutties. Stumbled over that one. And I like the receiving core, too. Luther Burden III is not a bad route runner. So I really like this Missouri Tigers team.
Yeah, I am on the Tiger train with you guys as well. This was a game I picked earlier this week. I saw it. Home underdogs, conference game, 14 versus 13. Give me Missouri all day. I know they're 2-2 in their last 2 matchups, but they played Georgia super tough last week. And I think they have plenty of talent to beat the Volunteers. For me, it is a matter of, obviously it's a big quarterback matchup here with Cook versus Milton. Who takes care of the ball, who limits the mistakes, and, go from there. But I'm going to take the Tigers. Joe Milton, by the way, is like an all-time, like, what if for me. Like, if he could just figure out how to take care of the ball, not be so spastic and up and down, like, he has so much arm talent. It's insane. But anyway, I'm going to go with Missouri. So we have our shot for the late window. Georgia, number 2 Georgia, hosting Ole Miss, the number 9 Rebels. Noah, what do you think?
A couple things to say on this one. It's going to sound like I'm disrespecting Ole Miss, but I'm really not. But I got to be honest. I'm less nervous about this game than I was against Missouri, both at home. But when I looked at Missouri, I've been very impressed with some of the games. I thought they had a lot of convincing wins, and even their loss. I mean, it was just an absolute shootout against LSU, where neither team played any defense at all. And obviously, we know LSU is one of the probably easily top 5 to 10 offense in the country. So, I mean, I was thinking, man, this team is one game away from being undefeated. And when I look at Ole Miss, yes, they're 8-1, but I look at a lot of their games and they weren't unimpressive. So they haven't been impressive enough for me. So when I look at their schedule, I watched their game against Tulane. Tulane completely had a meltdown in the second half. I think it was tied at halftime. They had a backup
started on that game.
They had a backup quarterback in Kai Horton, who basically, no disrespect, he did okay in the first half, but then he showed he was a backup in the second half, and they ended up pulling out a 17-point win there. Alabama, they were completely uncompetitive in the second half. It wasn't even close, and it was a game that either they were tied or their Ole Miss was actually winning at halftime, something like that. And then it wasn't even like I thought Alabama was playing great. I just thought Ole Miss in the second half looked absolutely dead. Like their offense Jackson Dart couldn't hit anything. They beat LSU in an absolute shootout. But again, I mean, any team, it seems like, can score 55 points against LSU these days. So I'm not too sure about that one. Barely beat Arkansas, who's terrible this year, but they still beat the Florida Gators because the Gators are an absolute joke. Barely beat Auburn, another team that has not been good this season. Okay, they blew out Vanderbilt, but like I said, Vanderbilt should honestly just fold their program at this point and stick to basketball and baseball. And then A&M. A&M is an absolute joke, and they only beat them by 3. So I've not been very impressed with Ole Miss for most of the season. I think their best win probably is, they killed Georgia Tech, which, Georgia Tech has been competitive this season. They upset UNC, but that's not like they're beating, some incredible team. And Vanderbilt, I think those are their only 2 convincing wins on the season. The rest have been, nail biters. And when you look at Georgia, and this is where I'm going to say a lot because obviously it's a team I know the absolute best. I think it depends on what Georgia team comes out, guys, because Georgia playing at their best can beat any team in the country. They still have, in my opinion, the most talented team in college football. Their problem this season is more on the mental side. They don't have that ruthless edge that they've had the last 2 seasons. They've only played 2 complete games all year against Kentucky. Like you said, Andy, they came at 5-0. They were firing all cylinders, and then they lost 51-13. It was not even close. And then Florida, which, like Tom said, we were at that game, and it was so fun seeing, the Florida fans. They were so happy after that first touchdown. They're celebrating. As the game goes on, they just start complaining more and more, cursing more and more, and then all of a sudden they start leaving more and more.
Facts.
But other than those 2 games, they've had a lot of games, and it's not necessarily that they've been close to losing, although they have had some close calls like against Auburn and Missouri. But even against cupcake teams, the cupcake teams they started the season with, they'd have quarters or halves where they looked asleep, where their offensive line wasn't blocking anybody, where they couldn't really, they just looked out of sorts pretty much. So I think they've gotten that a little bit better as the season's gone along, but they haven't played well consistently enough to where I was like last season. Like last season, I was like, oh, I have no doubt they're going to win this game. Like if they show up, if they don't have an absolute stinker, they're going to win this game easily. And they showed that in pretty much every game except Ohio State and Missouri. This season, pretty much a lot of the games they've played, like South Carolina, Auburn, have been pulling my hair out, even though they've won the games at the end. But love Carson Beck. I like him a lot. I think he's very talented. He takes care of the football pretty well. He's accurate. When the offensive line gives him time, he can make any throw. He's not a guy that's going to hold your team back. He can win this team a lot of games. I mean, here's the thing, right? People want to joke about Stetson Bennett. Oh my God, he's a 45-year-old mailman who's throwing to all these 5-star players. You better enjoy it for now, UGA haters, because if Dylan Raiola comes in, he doesn't decommit or go somewhere else, and they have a 5-star throwing to these guys, be careful what you wish for. But Carson Beck is solid. The running game is solid, even though they've had injuries. Dejon Edwards and Kendall Milton have been phenomenal. No Brock Bowers, but Oscar Delp. Obviously, he's no Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers is the best tight end in the country, maybe the best skills player overall. But Oscar Delp has done a respectable job filling in. Their wide receivers are solid. They don't have that Marvin Harrison type of guy, but I mean, guys like Dominic Lovett, Lad McConkey, a very solid wide receiver, one of the most underrated in the country, in my opinion. Ra Thomas, Marcus Rosemy, Jack Saint, they got weapons. My question mark is the offensive line. They need to hold up front. They've been inconsistent, but like I said, when they've held up, like the second half against Auburn, Kentucky, Florida, this offense is basically unstoppable. So that's my key to the game here. On the other side, I like Jackson Dart. Judkins is an absolute animal at running back. I like Trey Harris at wide receiver as well. The key to the game on the other side, guys, the Georgia defense has kind of done a complete 180, whereas in 2021 and 2022, their front seven was incredible, but their secondary could actually be exposed. If you could hold up front, which obviously was very difficult, pretty much no one except Ohio State could do it consistently. If you could hold up front, you could beat their secondary. This season, it's kind of the opposite. I actually have complete faith in their secondary, but their pass rush has been very inconsistent. I mean, Nazir Stackhouse, I know he had that pick last week, but he's been kind of, inconsistent most of the season. Same with Zion Logue. They have the players. Now, that said, the loss of Jamon Dumas Johnson, I think, is a big loss. I mean, as soon as he exited the game, that was when Missouri started running it with Schrader and ripping off big run after big run. So that could be a concern with Judkins. But I don't know. Like I said, I have this gut feeling. I was more concerned about Missouri coming in this game than I am with Ole Miss. And UGA, I don't know what it is. They seem to play the competition where they play a team like Auburn and they struggle, and then they play Kentucky and they just absolutely blow them out of the woodshed. And they were fairly convincingly the better team in the second half against Missouri, I'd say. The game was never, I'd say, put away, but I was feeling more and more confident as it went on. So I do have Georgia winning this one. It's at home as well. Georgia plays phenomenal at home. So I'm going to pick Georgia win this one. Something like 31-20.
All right. He's taking the Bulldogs. You can't fault the Bulldog fan for picking his team. Tommy Boy.
Yeah, I'll keep this relatively quick here. I think Dart is a great dual threat quarterback, but he does not have enough firepower on his offensive line. I think Georgia can exploit them and turn their weakness into a strength. Quinshon Judkins is very good near the red zone. Trey Harris had over 200 receiving yards last week. But who are we kidding? They beat Texas fraudulent A&M by 3 flipping points. Now, this is where Georgia gets tested. Van Pran, Ratledge, they have to step up and defend that Rebels front four that has 31 sacks on the season. I'm talking about Jared Ivey, Suntrain Perkins, Cedric Johnson, Isaac Ukwu. I mean, these guys are all over the place. They're coming at you from different angles. And Carson Beck, first full season starter, he might have a struggle or two here and there. But with Carson Beck, there's a lot more good than there is not so good. Mm-hmm. So I'll take Carson Beck and the Bulldogs in this game, even without Brock Bowers.
I like it. And again, we are very chalky this week, folks. I want to take Ole Miss. I do. But I think you hit it on the head. Like, I don't want to get in that Tulane game. Noah, it's something I went off on this show about. Because how do you not announce your fucking starting quarterback isn't out until game time? Absolutely ridiculous. But they did. Tulane still with the backup gave Ole Miss absolutely everything they could handle for about 3 quarters in that game. Ole Miss barely sneaks by Texas A&M by 3 last week. Georgia pulls away from a good Missouri team, ends up beating them by 9. Georgia at home, number 2 team in the country. Lane maybe getting some heat this week from a video dropping on social media. Give me the Bulldogs. We're going to go to our last game of the week and close out the show in the late window. Back to the Pac-12, number 6 Oregon Ducks hosting Caleb Williams and the Alex Grinchless USC Trojans. Tom, what do you think about this one?
Yeah, I guess the Grinch stole Christmas a little soon this year for USC. Both teams have a loss to Washington, but Oregon's defense is better. They gave up just 6 points to Utah compared to USC's that gave up 34. Rough comparison there, guys. Not sorry. Caleb Williams, phenomenal passer. The talent is there. But, when the competition gets harder, his team around him seems to fold a little bit, especially that defense. But I can't say enough about his talent and how well he's looked under center for majority of this season. I know he had the 3-pick game against Notre Dame where he looked really bad, but he's still a really good quarterback. Whether some folks want to admit it or not, Taj Washington has 3 straight 100-yard games for a reason. Marshawn Lloyd averages 7.5 yards per carry for a reason. That offense is legit. Austin Jones is a great complementary back. Brendan Rice, their Z receiver, has 10 touchdowns. Now we go to the other side of the ball with Bo Nix. Guy who can throw. He can run here and there. He does have 5 rushing touchdowns. Again, you could argue, well, he's a game manager. Well, you know what? He's really good, and he's a Heisman candidate because of that. Bucky Irving, phenomenal runner, 9 touchdowns on the year, over 800 yards. Jordan James, 9 touchdowns as well. Troy Franklin has not had a 100-yard game since October 14th. I wish you can bet certain player props in college, but I would take the over on Troy Franklin's yards this week. Personally,
some
for
of them
me.
do.
I know some of them do. Yeah. Is it Bet MGM?
I've bet FanDuel props
really
before. Yeah, earlier this year I had I don't remember which game it was, but it was Marvin Harrison over like 88.5 yards. It was like one of the easiest bets of my life.
Look at that.
So check it on Saturday because they might have them listed.
I will. And then lastly here, I will say Brandon Dorlus and Jordan Birch will be coming for Caleb Williams all game long. Oregon has won 6 of the last 8 matchups. These teams have not played in 3 years. Give me the Quack Pack.
I mean, this game in Eugene, I'm all over the Ducks here. I mean, USC cannot stop a nosebleed on defense. I don't care if the defensive coordinator is gone or not. You're going to have to prove to me that you can stop this number 6 Oregon team on the road. So I think a lot of points are going to be scored. I do still think USC's offense is a threat, but Dan Lanning is such a good coach. I'm a big fan of that guy, but I'm going to take the Ducks here. Noah, what do you think about this game? Help us close out the show, my friend.
Well, not to disappoint the viewers and make it boring, but we are going to go 3-3 on this one again because I picked Oregon as well for the reasons Tom kind of outlined. 2 phenomenal offenses, 2 really good quarterbacks. But at the end of the day, I just have so much more faith in the Oregon defense. USC can't stop anything, and they fired Alex Grinch because of it. But, we look at Oregon. Like I said, Bo Nix has been great. I love Irving and James. If you want to talk about 1A, 1B, both averaging close to 7 yards per carry and both with 9 rushing touchdowns on this season. This is a very well-balanced offense. Troy Franklin is a stud, 10 touchdowns in the season. He's about to eclipse 1,000 yards as well. Heck, because he's playing USC, he might even eclipse 1,100 yards in this game, if not more. Tez Johnson, another guy, he broke out last week. He had 180 yards, 2 touchdowns, 12 catches against Cal. Very solid number 2 receiver for them, 6 touchdowns overall on the season. And then up front, I think this is really where this game will be decided. Oregon has 28 sacks on the season, which ranks in the top 15. Their defense has been much improved under Dan Lanning, who had that historic defense at UGA that he helped coach up in 2021. So I can't say I'm surprised at all. This is the reason that Oregon is a much scarier team than they've been in the past because, while they've always had these explosive offenses, their defenses are typically like this USC defense, where they're always terrible. But this year, they're actually good, and USC's defense still is terrible because Lincoln Riley has no idea how to put together a defensive coaching staff, and that has been evident for when you start coaching 6-7 years now, pretty much at this point. So I think it'll be high scoring, like Andy said, but Oregon's just a far more balanced team. So I'm going to pick Oregon to win this one, 48-35.
Ooh, all right. I love that you're bringing in the score predictions this week. Awesome stuff, boys. This has been a great show. Thanks to everybody for making it through. If you made it this far, thanks for tuning in. Week 11 of From the Stands. Make sure you check us out on social media, From the Stands Sports. All of our links will be down there in the description. Links for my show, links for Tom's show. We'll throw Noah's links in there as well. Thank you to everybody for tuning in. Enjoy this weekend of games. We will see you next week for week 12. We're out of here. Brian, we did it. I hope you're proud of us, buddy.